With the Ironheart series released just weeks away from, of course, its debut on Disney+, we already know that Disney as a whole is in pure panic mode. We're talking about those like Bob Iger, the Disney executives, the board of directors, and those even over at Marvel Studios like Kevin Feige. They just don't know what to do with the series anymore after it was sitting on the shelf for 3 years, give or take, more realistically around 2.5 years, because we know that they were actually hiding the marketing campaign for at least 8 to 9 months for starters. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So the Ironheart trailer disaster continues. This is getting ratioed across all forms of social media out there for obvious reasons. The acting is just not there. The writing, the directing, the producing, everything about this series, the CGI, the suit, everything about this show looks very lackluster and out of place. Nobody asked for this, especially for a series based on a comic that only debuted back in 2016 under Disney. A comic, by the way, that really wasn't all that popular to the point that it got cancelled. Very early on, mind you. Now, what's interesting here is that we know that Ironheart, alright, Riri Williams, the character in the series, well, there's a lot of things going on, not just with this character, but also with the story and how Disney did the unthinkable with the show, and how they are now in desperate damage control mode to really take control of the entire situation, to find a way to water down the backlash before it even begins its second phase, once it does debut in late June. Now, we already know one thing about Ironheart is that it is basically the Acolyte 2.0. I keep putting this out there. It is a mirror image of the Acolyte series. However, with the Disney company already dealing with extreme backlash over the Ironheart trailer as it was ratioed across all social media, one major development going on now involves more to do with Disney's actions recently toward Ironheart in a desperate move for damage control. Now, already after a dreadful third test screening for Ironheart took place, Disney is already beginning to delete scenes from the 6-episode series as best as they can to not make their agenda too obvious. As it turns out, there were 3 separate scenes across all 6 episodes that involved Riri Williams delivering her pronouns, one of which involved Riri facing one of the villains in episode 6, in fact, the villain, where a line of dialogue was used questioning why is she in this suit, what makes her so special. One line of dialogue from Riri Williams in response to that from the villain in the last cut for episode 6 involved her replying, "Excuse me, but I go by she, her." The comedic scene in episode 6 was best described as atrocious by screeners, that it made the entire audience label it as one of the worst scenes that was set up in its final moments that took the seriousness away from the entire ending of the show. Now, Disney reportedly already is debating on deleting this scene in particular, as it is a desperate move to shorten episode 6 and to take out as many cringe moments as possible. Now, another sequence, get this, that was shot for episode 4, that is now in the process of getting scrubbed, involved Riri talking about Tony Stark and belittling him and mocking him when watching past interviews of him on television. Disney was trying to use this scene as a way of moving away from the source material in the short-lived 2016 comic, and it backfired completely by test screeners. Iron Man's legacy was reportedly mocked multiple times in various cuts of Ironheart, and there were, of course, and there are said to be so many moments like this in the show, that with all the deleted scenes planned, it's likely that the show will flow in a very erratic and unorganized way by the Disney company and Marvel Studios. Now guys, let me say one thing about this real quick. The fact that they stooped that low, to the point where you're using pronouns multiple times, that's even outperforming the Acolyte show, where they used it once, right? When I believe it was Osha said, "What is they, them doing here?" or something around those lines. The fact that they had Riri Williams delivering her pronouns 3 separate times in this show, across episode 6, across the entire, I should say, the 6 episodes, I think it really just goes to show you that they obviously we're in a different time. I'm not saying Disney's innocent at all, but given the fact that this show was shot some years ago at this point, it's quite pathetic, honestly. It's been sitting on the shelf for a very, very long time. But one thing about all of this is that, yes, we do know that Riri Williams is yet another example of the Disney agenda, right? Using this character as a vessel to spew all of their nonsense, to kind of, say all these, garbage-driven things about a character that is so valued like Tony Stark. someone like Iron Man that is obviously the face of Marvel right now, and look, we know that ever since Endgame, a lot of people moved on from Marvel. Once Iron Man died, once Tony Stark was no more, a lot of people kind of just said Endgame was it for them, and they moved on to other franchises, right? A lot of people felt that way, and that's a valid reason, I get it. However, what's even worse than that is that some Disney board members are also pressuring Bob Iger to keep one scene focusing on the usage of pronouns, just like they did in the Acolyte series, to pander to a specific group of audience members / viewers. This emergency meeting that took place for Ironheart between Iger and the board was best described as so intense because they knew this is going to be as just as bad, if not worse, than the Acolyte series if they don't make last-minute changes, which is what they are doing right now, by the way, by deleting a flood of scenes for Episode 3, 4, and 6 for starters. One more test screening is already set to begin by the very beginning of June, once the edits and the scenes are all rearranged by Disney and Marvel, and if that too fails, they are already planning to cut back more funds from their marketing campaign. Now look, we already talked about them cutting their funds from their marketing campaign. You know, millions and millions of dollars have been cut. Goes to show you that they really have no confidence in this show at all. They just want to get it out there, they want to get it done, and honestly, if I were Disney, I would have canceled this thing. I would have Batgirled this thing right from the get-go. They know it's going to be a failure. They know it's going to quite potentially, alter the momentum of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for 2025, leading into 2026. Whether or not this has a deep impact on movies like Fantastic Four, we'll have to wait and see. But there's no doubt about it that this is going to definitely derail people's trust in Disney plus Marvel series moving forward, right? So again, I think at the same exact time, Bob Iger is desperately trying to latch on to what Disney used to do, but they're trying to make it not too obvious. That's basically what's going on right now over at Disney and Marvel Studios. Ironheart is already set up to cost, get this, Disney millions upon millions of dollars, based on how the series holds a $120 to $130 million budget for the show. However, with $50 million that went into merchandise, we talked about that as well. A lot of that merchandise is actually being canceled as we speak. They're not going to debut it in retail, nor will they debut some of that merchandise in the theme parks. And that is a huge blow to the Disney company. It is a very drastic moment for them because, look, we know that this is going to be a very serious moment for late June of 2025. Disney's going to see that it's going to be the Acolyte all over again, except for Marvel. It's going to have a very similar type of response from the fans, based on what we're looking at with the trailer. It doesn't have anything to do with the appearance of the characters or anything like that. It has a lot to do with the acting, the way that the series is set up, the way it's actually being marketed, and how they desperately, and quite honestly, deliberately, shifted away from what they could have done with Tony Stark's daughter, or something around those lines, or maybe at the bare minimum, they could have used the kid from Iron Man, 3 if they really wanted to, but they didn't. So, overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.